Hi. Happy Tuesday. I almost said happy Monday because it is the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend, and it feels more like a Super Monday rather than a Tuesday. So happy whatever day this happens to be. I do know that it happens to be another wet day in Des Moines. And if you live in the Des Moines area, then you know this has been a really, really, really wet spring. And honestly, it's been wet for months. Like, to tell the truth, I've been trying to get my house painted since October. Like, we were scheduled to have it painted at the end of October, and then it was scheduled for the first week in May and rescheduled for last weekend. It's rescheduled for this weekend. And I'm not even sure if it's going to happen because it will not stop raining. Now, people on the news, I suppose weather people on the news, have said this is historical rains. So that's all well and good. But what happens? What should you do when you get water in your basement? Especially if you get water in the basement of the house you just bought. Ugh, that's the worst for sure. So, should you totally freak out? Maybe. I mean, like, it's easy to say don't freak out, but I would freak out, so I get that. Should you become a water detective? Absolutely. And I've got some tips on exactly what you should do for that. Should you call Judge Judy and demand a court date because you got someone to sue? Maybe. Let's talk about this. Okay, so first of all, historical rain. So, like, it is entirely possible that somebody has lived in a house for 20 years and never had a problem with rain, and they have a wet basement today or yesterday or this weekend, whenever. But it's possible that this is the first time the wet basement has occurred because maybe the ground just can't take any more water and the water's got to go somewhere. So it's entirely possible this is your first wet basement event, but it really sucks when it's your first wet basement after buying a house where you thought it didn't have a wet basement problem. That is terrible. So what should you do first? Well, if you have to freak out, like, go ahead and freak out. If you have to call me, I'll talk you off a ledge, no problem. But first of all, you need to clean it up. Do not, under any circumstances, let that wet carpet sit there because it's going to get moldy. So get the water out of the house, dry everything. It's a lot of work. And I know, because I have had a house with a wet basement. Like, it was Noah's Ark until I had it waterproofed. So, and even last week, 2 weeks ago, remember the night that we got all the hail? That night I had a wet basement, but not from rainwater. I had it because, like, our sewer pipes apparently had a clog or something, and so we had a drain backup. Ugh, the worst. So I'm right there with you that it is a major drag when you have a wet basement. And so once you're done freaking out, clean it up. If you're worried about needing proof for insurance or Judge Judy, take pictures, but definitely do not let that water sit around and get stinky and gross and moldy. Yuck, yuck, yuck. So there are companies you can call. Like, we had Roto-Rooter out to fix our drain issue, and he was like, "Oh, your carpet is wet. We should call the restoration piece of our business, and I can have them out here in minutes." I'm like, "No, chill out, dude. Like, we need to clean this mess up first, assess it, and then decide if restoration needs to come out." So in my case, I had the carpets cleaned the next day, and we had an industrial fan put down to dry them out, and everything is fine. So if your drywall gets wet, you might need to cut your drywall out, but you definitely have to get the floor, dry it out, and pull back carpet so that can dry. If you let the carpet pad stay wet and yucky, then that's where smells come into play, and it might affect allergies and different things because mold grows from water. So definitely clean it up. Okay, number 2. So you freaked out, you've cleaned up the water. Now you do need to become a water detective. So where is the water coming from? Is it possible that your gutters are clogged? That is entirely possible. We had a house, it was in the lower Beaverdale, or like the lower Beaver neighborhood of Beaverdale, too many beavers. But I guess we didn't really know that you were supposed to clean the gutters. And so every time it rained, Scott would lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking, oh my God, when is the water going to come in? And it did come in because we didn't clean the gutters because we didn't really know. And so then once we figured that out, the water problem wasn't as bad. So clean your gutters. Did you have a downspout that maybe the wind blew away? Or if you have a naughty dog, like I do, sometimes our dog pulls the downspout away from the gutters. And so, the downspout makes the water go away from the house. But if it's not there, is the water pouring straight down your foundation? And is that what's contributing to the problem? Last summer, Jess, who's on our team, she had water coming through the windows. So her basement doesn't leak, but she had water during that really terrible storm at the end of June last year because it was coming in from her yard into the windows, very leaky, very bad, but not really something that she could fix because that's hopefully a once in a lifetime situation. And it just happened. The yard flooded. And so the windows were the cause of where the water came from. Is it possible that the water is coming from the ground? It's entirely possible. I mean, historical rains, the ground is just so saturated, there's nowhere for it to go. So once you have figured out where the problem is coming from, then you know what to do to fix it. Of course, you could clean the gutters. You can put the downspout back on. You could get longer downspouts. If it's coming through a window, is it because the window needs a new seal? What is the problem, and is it preventable if you made some changes to that particular window? If it's coming through the ground, well, you may need to get a professional out. So there are several companies, probably lots and lots of contractors who can help you determine what the problem is. And so some companies will say, this takes us into number 3. So let me back up a little bit. You freak out, you clean it up, you determine where the water is coming from because now you're a water detective. And then the next step is to fix the problem. So if you fix the problem yourself because it's gutters, downspout, something fairly simple, then that's fantastic. Another thing with the ground, you may need to bring some topsoil in so that the water runs away from the house instead of into the foundation. So checking on the grade of the dirt around the house. You might need a landscaper or, somebody with the skill and the will to do that work, in which case, for any of these suggestions that I have, if that's out of your wheelhouse, you can comment on this post or send me a message, and I've got people. So I can tell you exactly who to call. And if they can't do the work, then they'll tell you who can do the work. So you could get somebody out to fix the ground, or if it is your foundation and the water is coming in through the foundation, then you may need to call a waterproofing company or a contractor who can do waterproofing. So if you have a very old house, you may already know that, for some reason, 100 years ago, even less than 100 years ago, they just didn't build these houses, especially in Beaverdale, they didn't build the houses to not get water. They built the houses to actually get rid of the water. So if you look at your floor, it may not be even, there might be a drain maybe in the middle of the floor, in the middle of a room, and you'll notice that all the floors are kind of angled in a way that if water came into your basement, it would go straight to the drain. So that's one way to solve the problem. I mean, welcome to 2019, where today we know it's better to not let the water in your house at all, but that's how it goes. So if you need to waterproof the basement, how much does that cost? Well, it varies. Now, there are some companies who will come out and their quote is instantly at least $10,000, possibly $20,000, because that's just how much it costs for their service. So there are alternatives though. So just because you call the biggest name waterproofing company in the Yellow Pages or from Google does not mean that that's the only place you can do the work. So remember I said that I had a house with a wet basement once. I still have that house. And actually a couple of years ago, I used American Perfection to waterproof the basement. And it works great like a dream. I have not had water since. And I'm not kidding. Every spring, we had inches of water throughout the whole basement. So there are better alternatives. $4,500 is still pretty expensive. There's likely contractors who can identify exactly what needs to be done. Maybe you only need a sump pump. Maybe you don't need the water to be trenched. Maybe you need different solutions. I sell houses. I don't build them. I don't waterproof them. I know enough to be dangerous. And I'm passing that knowledge on to you so that you know enough to call several people to get quotes and to find out exactly what needs to be done. Hopefully it's an easy solution, like just doing a little bit of landscaping or cleaning out those gutters or something. But don't fall prey to the biggest price ticket possible out there. So then, once you have fixed the problem, well, what if you feel like you've been lied to? That house that I bought that had inches of water, it had inches of water the day of closing. So the previous owners said, no, we never had a water problem. And yeah, I have no idea how they didn't know, but they didn't know. And at the time, I was not as dangerous with all of my knowledge as I am today. So I just fixed the problem myself. I dealt with it for a few years, and then I finally fixed it by waterproofing after I'd saved up the money. So how you deal with feeling like you've been lied to is totally your choice. So if you need to call Judge Judy and go to court and sue everybody in the world, I totally support you. So here's how that works. And obviously I am a real estate agent, not an attorney. So that would be my first thing. If you were like, I want to sue the previous owner because they totally lied to me, I would say, no problem. Here is the name and number of a great attorney that you should call to do that, because I can't help you sue anybody. My goodness, they wouldn't let me do that. So the problem with suing people, from my perspective, my opinion, is that the onus of proof is on the buyer. And that sounds like legal terms, but I swear to God, I'm not a lawyer. But the onus of proof is on the buyer. That means that you have to prove in court to Judge Judy that you were lied to. And that's difficult. So, how do you know that the previous owner didn't have water problems? How do you know that, this historical rain is not actually the very first time that you had water in the basement? Maybe it never happened before. So a lot of times people talk to neighbors, and sometimes neighbors are the best resource in helping you determine if the seller was a liar face when they told you there was no water in the basement. Just casual conversation where people say, oh, well, every summer, this whole street, everybody, including your house, we all have our carpets out in the driveway drying off from the rains. Anytime it rains more than 2 inches in a day, everybody gets water in their basement. So neighbors usually know what's going on, but you are, if you take the time and the money to invest in some form of litigation or arbitration or mediation, some legal course that ends in ation, then you need to have that backup because your opinion may not get you very far with Judge Judy, if that makes sense. So it could be a difficult fight, but it might be worth it. Sometimes people are reimbursed for the cost of waterproofing. I think if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong on this statistic, but I believe that real estate lawsuits, the number one reason somebody is sued is because of water in the basement, or maybe it's non-disclosure. So, not everybody is completely honest, and that's really unfortunate, but that's how it is. So it's entirely possible the seller mistakenly disclosed that there was no water or maliciously disclosed. I don't know. But talking about going to court is the last step. So you definitely have to clean up the problem, find out where the problem is coming from, and fix the problem before you go to court. So whatever you do, do not leave yourself living in a house with a wet basement while you wait months for the legal system to work on your behalf. So hi, Janet. Glad you're here. That's my 2 cents today on what you should do if you have a wet basement. Well, here's a 3rd cent, because now you own the house. So this is, it's your responsibility to fix, because I was naturally going to say, we could always get you a new house and help you sell this one and buy a new one. But now there's a real problem that needs to be fixed. And, if you knew when you bought the house that, yeah, sometimes there's a trickle of water that comes in, maybe that trickle just turned into a lake in your basement. But regardless of who knew about it before now, you definitely know about it. And so you definitely want to fix that. Otherwise, we're probably going to have trouble when we go to sell your house. Or you could just say, yeah, it's like a lake every time it rains 8 inches. Then you've properly disclosed it, but maybe people would be discouraged from buying it. So that is my 2 cents plus a bonus cent. And hopefully we get some sunshine to dry this place up, because I'm tired of my sump pump running 24/7, and I'm sure everybody else out there is too. If you need anything, you have any questions, you want some names of the contractors that I have that would be good at doing some of this work for you, tag me in a post, send me a message here on Facebook, email me, heather@myrighthouse.com, and we'll get you hooked up. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Tuesday/Super Monday/ whatever day you're watching this video. I'll talk to you later.